You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into a March Madness edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, this is brought to you by Prize Picks, which is the official daily fantasy sports app of CLNS Media. Download the app today, put in the code CLNS, and they will match your first deposit up to $100, 100%. Come on now. As always, your boy Pat Lane here with my guy Matt St. Jean. And Matt, it's been a wild day. It's been a wild day.
I'm a big March Madness guy, and opening day March Madness today has lived up to the hype all day long.
It has, in fact. We had our first real bracket buster with an Oakland victory, and as you said, we are now a Jack Golke podcast.
Legend.
10 out of 20 on threes. Just absolutely on fire. On fire against a Kentucky team that looked like at least that they were going to just absolutely run away with at least things early on.
Well, that is a Kentucky team all year that has been like really good but really inconsistent on offense, and like their best offensive players are negatives on defense. So Every time they play, if their best offensive players aren't playing well, anybody can beat them. And you have a guy go 10 for 20 from deep. 10 for 20 from beyond the arc is what I think I'm going to do every time I go play pickup. which usually turns into about 1 for 7, and my teammates stop passing me the ball. But
yep, that's quite true. That's quite
0
true.
For 4.
My favorite was Long Beach State. So Long Beach State, for those of you that don't know, by the way, hello to Gary and Matt and Thad and Ashton out there saying hello to us guys, and we appreciate you here. Long Beach State, in case you guys didn't know this, by the way, the line was 19.5 and they lost by 20, which is wild. But Long Beach State fired their coach before the conference tournament. And he was like, hey, I know you fired me, but like, can I keep coaching? And they were like, yeah, okay, sure, why not? He won the tournament. So then they advanced to the NCAA tournament, which is like, wait, what? So they were a 15 seed against number 2 seed Arizona, who a lot of people have going to the Final Four out of the West region. And for the majority of the first half, they kept it really, really close. Now, Arizona pulled away in the second half and blew them out. But like, it was like they were winning for a good chunk of that first half, or it was like between 1 and 2 points or whatever. And it was a pretty wild game. And then obviously, like I said, they pulled away at the end, or pulled away in the second half, I should say. But just an awesome game to see. And what a storyline that would have been if they had somehow been able to pull that victory off.
Well, did you see the craziest part about that to me was that the athletic director tried to take credit for the run by basically being like, yeah, I fired the guy, and that's what gave him the spark. It's like, dude, you do not get to play both sides here.
I love it. I love that so much. That's so good. But it's been a good day. I'll tell you, Creighton got the dub against Akron. That one was close for a while. They ended up winning by 17, but that one was close for a while. And then BYU loses to Duquesne. Now, what's crazy about that? First of all, Duquesne stinks, so I can't believe that they won that game. But what's wild about that, and I hadn't really even heard this until someone mentioned it. BYU was supposed to be a 5 seed. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to be a 5 seed. The tournament, the selection committee actually said they are going to be a 5 seed, but BYU didn't want to play on Sunday, and the 5 seed was going to have to play on Sunday, and so they said, all right, we'll make you a 6 seed instead and put you up against Duquesne, and they lose. And it's like, oh my goodness, the fact they lost that game. And BYU just played like crap because Duquesne's, I just didn't think was a very good team.
There's first of all, there's a website called Shot Quality out there, which like they use like video data to figure out like how open your shots are and who's taking them, and like if everybody hit how they usually make shots, who would be winning. And they had BYU winning that game, which I think tells you everything about the fact that BYU could not make shots. They got shots, they just wouldn't fall. It was brutal, and that was my first real bracket buster because I had BYU in my Sweet 16. I've lost a couple Sweet 16 teams. I had BYU, and I had Colorado State, who looked ugly ugly against Texas. Brutal game.
Yeah.
But other than those, my Elite Eight I think is still intact. My Final Four is intact. My champion hasn't played yet, but I
There you
feel
go.
good about my bracket.
Yeah. So the only one I had losing in the Sweet 16 or in the Sweet 16 losing was Kentucky. And so, but outside of that, I have a few other losses, but it's all just first round losses. So nothing crazy.
I had Kentucky getting upset by Texas Tech, so that one didn't hurt me too much.
Oh, there you go. So it didn't really matter.
Yeah. We got the late night slot while we're doing this podcast should be a lot of fun. So if you see either of us glancing past the camera to look,
we'll be watching. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's March Madness time. What do you want from us?
Yeah, we're just sports nuts here. Before we get into the football, who's your Final Four? Who's your champion?
All right, so I actually have 3 brackets. So the way I have 2 actual brackets that I submitted, and then I have 1 bracket that I went through. So I do a math thing. I'm a math teacher. For those of you who don't know, I'm a math teacher, and I did a math thing about how the odds of projecting a perfect bracket are 1 in 5 quintillion. Which is a number of 18 zeros. And so I go through the consecutive probability about why if every game is 1 or 2, and then it's like, so then to predict the winner of the round of 32 game, it's actually 1 out of 8. And then so they predict the next game, it's actually 1 out of 132, right? And so this whole thing, and I go through this whole thing. And so I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys choose. So I just literally went through and had the kids just select. And so this one came out horrendously bad. We've already lost the Final Four team. We've lost an Elite 8 team already. We've lost a Sweet 16 team. It's gross. The Final Four in this one is UConn, Arizona, normal, and then Florida and South Carolina, with Florida beating Arizona in the championship. And I was like, but I just let it happen. I'm like, whatever, dude. That's fine. My actual one, the actual one that I chose, I have UConn, Arizona, Marquette, Purdue. And I have UConn beating Marquette for the championship. Big East championship there for you.
Leaning into it. See, it's funny. I'm a Big East guy. I don't have a single Big East team in my Final Four. I have 2 of them losing right before it. I've got Auburn. I have Auburn upsetting UConn, making it to the Final Four.
Okay.
I've got Arizona, just like you do. And then I've got Houston and Purdue on the other side. I think those teams are really good. And I got Purdue over Auburn in my championship. I hate taking Purdue. I don't like that pick. It makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I don't like myself for it. But I ended up there. I have Purdue as my champion, and I'm sticking by it.
All right. I hate it. Zach Edey's a bum, but that's the way it goes. Berg asked what grade I teach. I teach 8th grade math and a little bit of 11th grade math too, but mostly 8th grade math. So, all right, let's get away from March Madness if we can, and also say hello, Berg and Eric and 618 Racing and Old Man Mob and Murph. I seen you in there too.
Everybody's out there.
Everyone's coming through the chat. We appreciate you guys. Let's get into this number 3 pick, because this is going to be the conversation really forever, right? For the next week, or for the next month, and then really beyond the next month, also after the draft, right? Because this is the one that we look back at the next 5 years, right? What did they do here? How did they make this? How did they turn their franchise around, essentially? Because that's what you're trying to do at number 3, right? You're trying to turn your franchise around. And so the question is, and I'm going to bring it to you, the question is do you feel, look, Caleb Williams is gone. So let's take Caleb Williams off the table. Caleb Williams going number 1 overall. It's happening. I don't care what people say about him. I don't care. Don't care. He's going number 1 overall. The Bears will be dumb not to take him. He's going number 1 overall. So we don't know what we assume Washington's going to stay at 2. We don't know what Washington's going to do.
And I think we talk about Washington. They've played this so close to the vest.
Yes, they
have. Somebody pointed out, with their coach hiring process, outside of them not getting Ben Johnson and the things that came out after that, we didn't hear a peep. We didn't hear a peep about their GM search. So, obviously the odds have now shifted to Jaden Daniels there. I think that might just be people in the media saying things.
Right.
Nobody maybe really it is. Knows. But I don't know if anybody has any actual insight into that. Drake May has been the consensus number 2 until we got to after the season. So like, I feel like they're just going to like Drake May, and that's going to end up being the pick, and it's going to be very normal. But
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to know. We may not know until, when that card is actually in and it's announced.
Yeah. And that's, to me, I think the Jaden Daniels thing is just because people think he'll fit better in Kingsbury's system. But like, I think Drake May would fit just fine into his system, to be honest with you, if we're being honest.
I don't think there's issues with either one there.
Right. So the question becomes, right? So the question becomes, is Jaden Daniels or Drake May, both of them, is Jaden Daniels or Drake May going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? Because in the next 3 years, you need the guy you take at number 3 to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Because that's what it takes. Because you're going to be able to get, people in the comments talking about Minnesota. Minnesota has loaded up. They have 2 first-round picks this year. They have their first-round pick next year. They might theoretically move Justin Jefferson, although I think they'd be insane to do that. I highly doubt they're going to do that.
Well, and if you get a rookie quarterback, then you have all the money in the world to pay Justin Jefferson.
Exactly. So, and you wouldn't move up to get a quarterback and then trade the best wide receiver in the NFL. That's stupid. So the question is do you believe that Jaden Daniels and or Drake May are going to be top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL in the next 3 years?
And I think it's also like, to kind of add more nuance to it, there's a certain amount of playing the odds of it.
Yep.
Of like, okay, because obviously, there's never a guy that's 100%. Even guys who get taken number 1 overall aren't. But it's like, all right, it's going to be, do we think this guy has the tools to end up in the top 5? Do we think this guy has the mental ability to end up in the top 5? Do we think that, historical precedent indicates that our evaluations are correct? Because you also don't necessarily want to bet the 3rd pick on a guy who is, a historical outlier. And I think
that's correct.
I think that's something I liked Bryce Young last year. I also think I probably should have taken his size into consideration a lot more. Guys that big don't often end up being good NFL quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to use the number 1 overall pick in the draft, you need to strongly consider that information in your decision making. And obviously, I'm assuming they did, and they still liked him, and that's how it works. If you pick a quarterback, there's always going to be a certain amount of risk, a high degree of risk, because you can make the right pick according to all the analysts, put everything around him, and have it still not work. That's the nature of this business. But do we have a guy we feel good about? I think that's the first question you got to answer at pick 3, and it's how many of these guys do we feel good about?
Right, and that's really the question, right? I feel more comfortable with Drake May than I do with Jaden Daniels. I think, and you talk about the size thing. I mean, Jaden Daniels, his size quarterback, those guys typically don't pan out. It doesn't mean that he won't, but he would be a historical outlier, right? Based on the history of the league that we've seen so far, he would be an outlier at size and weight, at his size and weight of being an elite quarterback in the NFL. He just would. And so, again, that doesn't mean that he can't be, but it just makes him a little bit of an outlier. And so I feel more comfortable with Drake May. I still don't know how much I love Drake May, but I do think that he has the ability to get there. I know a lot of people that I listen to and trust significantly believe that. I know Phil Perry came out and said that he thinks that Drake May is not just the 2nd best prospect in the draft, but the 1st best prospect in the draft. He actually thinks he's a better prospect than Caleb Williams, which I don't know if I'd go that far, but that's what Phil Perry believes. There's a lot of guys on Twitter and elsewhere that really, really love Drake May and have him as their clear-cut number 2 above Jaden Daniels. And so, and I believe them, but again, you always have the questions.
Yeah, and I if we want to go into these quarterbacks in depth, I think a little bit to talk about, why it is that we like them. Like, for me, the pro of a guy like Drake May is that when you watch, especially like his highlights, some of the cool stuff he does things that remind you of Josh Allen. He's creative.
Mm-hmm.
I think both Taylor Kyles and I came to this conclusion separately that he does all of the things that Mac Jones tried to do, except they work. He's athletic enough and smart enough and quick enough to pull it off and make those weird plays happen. We're talking about, left-handed throws while getting sacked, going for touchdowns type of thing. He's got great size. He can run. He could basically do everything you want a modern quarterback to do. And he's young and he's been productive all like immediately. The downside is that, he's like Josh Allen. There's inconsistencies. He has to grow a lot. He has
Right.
to develop on the job. He has to be more accurate. His footwork has to be better. He has to see the field better. All the things can be improved. Sometimes you end up like Josh Allen. Sometimes you end up like Sam Darnold. And that's who he could turn out to be for you. For Jaden Daniels, he might be the most accurate quarterback in this draft. He's a really good thrower, but his anticipation, I think, is just as bad as Mays, and he has more experience. His arm isn't as good as Mays. He's very thin, and he's a highlight reel. Like his pro and his con are the same thing. He never gives up on a play, so he turns all these plays into highlight reels. But at the next level, those might be injuries with his size. They played in an offense where all the receivers were like elite deep threats, and it's for anybody in the chat who's played like NCAA football 14. You know how you get like a mobile quarterback and you call 4 verts and you watch all the defenders go down the field and then you just take off running with the quarterback? That was like half of the Jaden Daniels offense. Is that going to work in the NFL? No. So he has to find ways to get that production elsewhere.
Right.
I think Jaden Daniels is actually a lot like Justin Fields. And I liked Justin Fields a lot. He's very similar in regards to like accurate guy, playmaker on the run, needs to get a little bit more feel for it at the next level. He's just thinner and older than Fields was coming out. And that's concerning. So like I love Daniels. I think of the Patriots personally, I would take May at 3. I wouldn't take Daniels at 3. I understand people who would. It's just about weighing, how much do you weigh the injuries? What do you think can be developed in a quarterback? I think is a big question here.
Right.
Because people have different philosophies on it.
Yeah, and people, people in the chat are saying they don't love Drake May, and I don't blame you necessarily. He's not a perfect guy, and Murr says he's not sold on either of them, and I don't necessarily blame him for that. Someone said that someone compared Jaden Daniels to RG3, and they have a similar size. I think Jaden Daniels is 6'4", 210. I think I just looked it up. I think RG3 was like 6'2", 216 or something like that. So close, 2 inches shorter, and he was a little bit heavier. So like. RG3 was 2 inches shorter and a little bit heavier. So he had a little bit more muscle on him than Jaden Daniels does, or a little bit more size, I guess. But they're similar body types. I don't know if they're the same type of thrower, but they have similar body types.
I think they're similar stylistically too.
Yeah. And so, I don't hate that comparison necessarily. But who knows? I mean, that there were a lot of people that RG3, if he didn't get hurt, who knows what could have happened to him. And so, we'll see. Now people are talking about Bo Nix, and the problem I have with Bo Nix is that he was so bad at Auburn that I can't get that Auburn like tape out of my head. I just can't get Auburn Bo Nix out of my head. He was better in Oregon, but Oregon's a wide open offense. It's not the same, man. It really isn't. So that worries me.
Well, and it's the Oregon offense is like you look at Nix's average depth of target, it's like only a couple yards down the field because they spread the field out wide, they send receivers deep, and they get underneath things to just kind of wear you down the field.
Right.
And where Nix was good was that he was able to repeatedly make the easy throws. Like he's really accurate underneath, which I don't think we saw at Auburn. That was an area where he improved.
Right.
And he's got a good pocket presence. He's second only to Michael Penix and like pressure to sack rate. But like he's a good runner, but he got an okay arm. He's not like a high level arm. He doesn't have high level accuracy down the field. He's never really been put in a position where it's like we need you to make high level throws down the field to win us a ball game at Oregon because that offense, gives you so much. So like you're counting on the most experienced college quarterback to ever play the game, suddenly finding another tier of improvement at the NFL, which can happen, but you never like, right. How good of a bet is that? How much, if we were putting money on it, how much money would you want to put on that bet? I wouldn't put pick number 3 on it.
Well, and that's
pick number 34,
absolutely not.
Pick number 34, maybe. I think there's valid reasons you can go either way with it, and I think you have a good argument.
Well, I think that's the big thing for me, right? Is that So those are the questions you have to ask yourself. And the hard thing is that everyone's looking at the same tape. Everyone's watching the same people. It's like it's not like we have access to some of the obviously the coaching staff and the scouting staff have access to the actual players, and they can talk to them and look at them, and they can write on the board, and they can talk to their they can talk to their college coaches and talk to their high school coaches and talk to their teammates and everything. They could do everything, right? And do all that research that we're not necessarily doing, of course. But they're looking at the same tape that we are, right? They're not looking at anything else. And so people look at guys and have different evaluations. And, you just have to be confident that your evaluation is the right evaluation, that you're going to be correct. And what it comes down to is that if you believe that guy can be a top 5 to 10 player in the NFL, you're doing it. Like, you have to take the guy. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if that's the case, then you take him. And, if it isn't the case, then you move out and you do something like Minnesota, and Minnesota, trades you 11 and 23 and their first round pick next year. And, and then you kind of do something like that, right? Now, someone sent me well, actually, maybe we can do it if you want, but this guy Ben had sent me a DM who has some really interesting ideas. But he sent me an idea saying trade Minnesota for 11-23 and their first round pick next year. Then use that first round pick and number 68 to move up to get a pick in the 20s or a pick around 20.
I don't hate that idea at all.
And now you're drafting 4 guys in the top 34.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one of those things, right? And so
you might not get your quarterback out of that, but what you will hopefully get is a left tackle, a wide receiver, one other piece on offense, and you can flash in a defensive piece or take a flyer on a quarterback or whatever.
100%, right? 100%. And I think, and that's one of those interesting things for me. And so it gets interesting, right? And Dirty Guard here says, Zach Wilson's eval wasn't correct. I mean, my eval on Zach Wilson was correct. I don't know. It just depends on whose evaluation was correct. If the Patriots were at 2, would they have taken Zach Wilson? I don't know. Right? It just depends on the team that's taken.
And that was a particularly difficult year to do evaluations with COVID too. It was a weird season. And I think I don't know. The tough part with quarterbacks too is that none of them are polished products. You're basically betting on somebody to improve at the next level. So your evaluation can be 100% correct. And the guy just doesn't improve. You bet on trades that don't work or don't translate the way you thought they would. It's not the evaluation. It's it's how you use that information, how you blend that in with stuff, which is really the harder part here. But yeah, it's I don't hate the idea. Well, and I think the idea of trading back, I think this is kind of like a 2-part logic tree for New England. The first question is what we talked about with the quarterback. Is there going to be somebody there at 3 that you think can be the guy, and you take him? And if the answer to that question is no, then it kind of branches into two different trees. One of the trees is how much do you value and like the guys who are non-quarterbacks who are going to be on the board, Marvin Harrison Jr. and anybody else that would be in consideration at that pick. And then the other half of it is how much value is there in trade-ups that are offered to you. And it's about evaluating those two sides of it and seeing which way you want to go with it.
So can I tell you? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I had seen something interesting the other day, and it was an analysis of the highest paid players at each position and where they are found in the draft. And wide receiver was the position that was found third latest in the draft of all of the positions in the NFL. I want to say only like linebacker and guard were behind it or something like that. I think it also said that no wide receiver taken in like the top 10 is on the list, which I imagine that data point is going to change very quickly here once Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith are all up for extensions. But I don't remember if they all actually went in the top 10. But I do think that is interesting when you consider, how you handle the wide receiver position going forward, Would you rather, like, obviously you love Marvin Harrison Jr., but would you rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. or one of the top 4 tackles, and you take 2 wide receivers on days 2 and 3 of the draft? Which one of those gives you better odds? That's an open question. I don't think there is an answer to it, but I think it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and what I find interesting is that I've seen some people, and someone actually commented in the chat about it too, about moving back with LA. You move back 2 spots to 5. LA gets Marvin Harrison Jr., and they don't give up a ton. You're not going to give up a ton to get there, but maybe their 3rd round pick this year and their 3rd round pick next year, or something like that, right? It's not going to be a haul to move up 2 spots. And then you take, in my opinion, the safest pick of the 1st round, the safest pick in the entire draft, in my opinion. Murph, I hope you're listening, Murph, because the safest pick in the draft is Joe Alt. He's the safest pick in the draft. If that guy isn't an absolute stud, all-pro left tackle, nobody knows anything about football if that guy's not an absolute monster. He's incredible. He's quick as hell. He's fantastic. He's incredible.
He's really good.
I don't know if I can justify him at 3 with the need at quarterback and with the opportunity to get so many different options to move back to 11 and still get a Pro Bowl level left tackle. I don't know if it's worth it to take him at 3 when you can still get a Pro Bowl guy at 11. But I can tell you that I think he might be the best player to come out of this draft. And again, I just feel like if I had to bet my life on one guy being a Hall of Famer from this class, it would be that guy.
So I would still say Marvin Harrison Jr. there. But I think one of the things that makes it interesting here is that wide receiver and offensive tackle have a loaded like top tier.
Right.
Where like I really like Joe Alt, but like Troy Fatanu, if you get him at like 11.
Yeah, but the problem with him is he's mostly a right tackle. That's the issue. He's mostly a right tackle.
You're thinking of Fuaga. Fatanu's the left tackle.
Fuaga, damn it.
Yeah, they get the 2. Yeah, they get me too. And it's like I still think he's high level, and the same thing for the wide receiver. Like I love Marvin Harrison Jr. If you traded back, ended up with Rome Odunze, you're also going to love that.
Right.
So I think that's like, I don't know. I don't know where they view it, and I think another important question here, which they have answered in the building, but we don't, is how did they view this year?
Right.
Is their goal for this year to put it all out on the field? Or is their goal for this year to throw a bunch of draft picks at the board, but mostly just build a value? And this is like year 0. This is your transitional year. This is your foundational year. This is your evaluative year. And next year is where you kind of take your lessons learned and hopefully have a whole bunch of cap space and draft capital and put a bunch of pieces together.
Right.
And I think, it's hard to tell with free agency because they went after Calvin Ridley very aggressively.
Yep.
And everything drops off after that. There's no other really high quality receivers. So you can't do anything there. There's no high quality tackles. So you can't be aggressive there. There was one opportunity for them to show they could be aggressive in free agency, and they went for it and didn't get it. So it's tough to tell exactly where this front office is, how they view the team, where they want to go. Although I do think Jacoby Brissett was a 1-year deal, right?
Yes. 1 year, $8 million. Yep.
I did think that was interesting because I think if their expectation was, hey, we're going to sign somebody and we're going to have him, be a starter this year and a backup in the future, you do a multi-year deal. I think the fact that it's 1 year is interesting. And maybe that's on Brissett. Maybe Brissett's like, hey, I want to hit the market again and I'll come back if you want me, but I want my money. But I think that indicates everything that we've seen, I think indicates that they want to be aggressive and go now and get a quarterback and just start going. But it's also silly season, and that could all be smoke screens trying to drive up the cost of a trade up.
And 100%. And again, it all comes down to the evaluation. And they're not dumb enough to just randomly take a quarterback at 3. You're just not taking the best guy available. Oh, we're just not taking. Well, he's the best quarterback, so we're going to take him. No, that's not what you're doing. And I can't imagine that's what they're actually going to do. And so, we have to just trust that they know what they're doing. But you're right. It doesn't seem like they want to just sit back and like tank this year again. But we'll see. You never know how it goes and where it's going to go. But I'll tell you, hey Murph, thanks for coming through, man. We appreciate you as always, sir. But it's for me personally, it's that question, right? How fast do they want the rebuild to happen, right? And if they want the rebuild to happen right away, yeah, you need an elite quarterback to do that. And so,
and
does that mean well, who knows?
The answer to that question about how fast they want to do it is also very tied to the first question we asked in this whole thing. Do they think there's going to be a quarterback there they can win with?
Exactly.
That can be the guy for them.
Yep.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of JJ McCarthy talk in the chat, so I figure I'll just bring that subject up.
Of course.
Somebody had said that they weren't sure he was a guy who's going to go in the first. I think it's all media hype. I don't agree there. JJ McCarthy is the kind of guy who is incredibly coachable and has all of the intangibles and all of the things that coaches and scouts, football people love.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have the flashy numbers. And you put those two together, and that is a prime candidate for someone who isn't on fans' radars in October, but who is on scouts' radars. And when the media starts getting the information fed to them by front offices, and they find out what front offices actually think about a guy, that's when he will start to move up boards.
Exactly.
And McCarthy's a projection. And I think there's the two sides of it. There's the one, like, how good is he now? I think that's very much a question mark with his tape. You see him do a lot of good things, but it's not usually in these super high difficulty situations, even though he did excel in those when he got the opportunity. The other thing is, how high is his ceiling? His tools, one could look at his tools and say, this is Baker Mayfield-esque. And the question is, do you want to use a first-round pick on a guy whose ceiling is Baker Mayfield?
Right.
Especially if it's in the top 10. He did well at the combine, though. He measured in taller and bigger than I expected. Yeah, he's has more weight on him than I thought. So I think he's going to go top 10. I wouldn't be super shocked if Drake May goes at 2. I wouldn't be shocked if the Vikings move up to 3 with the Patriots to go get JJ McCarthy, because he's a fit for what they want to do offensively. And they've been looking for a quarterback, and they've been aggressive. And would I give up all that draft capital for JJ McCarthy? Absolutely not. But right. I'm not a front office GM, and I'm not a guy with my job on the line, and I'm not a person who's talking to the quarterback and personally falling in love with a prospect.
Right.
So I'm not in those shoes. The guys who are seem to be talking themselves into it.
Yeah. And so we'll see. I mean, it's a long way to go, of course, but in all those smoke screens, that it could 100% be fake. It could be no chance that, JJ McCarthy might drop into the second round, and whatever.
Could be another Malik Willis for all we know.
Yep. Or even Will Levis, right? Will Levis is supposed to go in the first round, and he waited till the second round too. So there's certainly a chance that it happens that way, but it does sound as though as soon as they started talking to executives and getting their opinions on it, that they were all of a sudden like, oh, JJ McCarthy's actually pretty good. Maybe we have to do it. So, we'll see.
And the JJ McCarthy stuff doesn't have, for some people, I'm sure it does, but his evaluation, it's not about the championship they won. It's about the fact that, he has a lot of tools. He has a good arm. Right. He's accurate. He's made plays on third down. He's mobile. He can make plays on the run. You can use designed runs with him. Michigan did that with him in the playoffs on big moments. And he's shown he can make every single throw. The volume numbers with him are largely because this Michigan was up by like 30 points halfway through the third quarter in almost every game they played, and took their foot off the gas. It's not about the volume stats with him, because that's not how this team went. And that's also a Jim Harbaugh thing. Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford. Andrew Luck didn't throw the ball massive amounts either. They ran it a ton because Jim Harbaugh loves that. Yeah. So, no, it's not. And that's JJ McCarthy to me is a classic, second round quarterback who's going to get taken in the first because he's a quarterback. Yeah. And those guys slide up as high as the top 10 all the time.
Yep. No, that's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah. So,
can I add one more quarterback note before we move on?
Do it. Yes, do it.
I was watching Xavier Legette tape last night, South Carolina.
Yep.
I had gotten some optimism for Spencer Rattler after not watching him for a while, and then I watched that game and I forgot why I did not like Spencer Rattler. Oh my goodness! Like he's got the talent. Like he's trying out there, but some of the reads, some of the throws, it was rough. It was by far the worst quarterback tape I've watched of any of the people I've watched so far this year. And yeah, so I'm just out on taking Spencer Rattler if I'm New England. Like, yeah, you got a fixed quarterback, but I'd rather use your 3rd round pick on a wide receiver and you're like then take Rattler because I feel like Rattler is just an automatic bust.
Yeah, right. Yep, you're not wrong. So
just throwing that 3rd round pick away. Trade it for somebody instead of drafting Spencer Rattler. Go throw it to somebody for a receiver or something.
Yeah, I don't blame you. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll take a break and then we'll come back and continue the conversation with a few other guys. And then we'll do our last few segments. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Now, Prize Picks even offers injury insurance so your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. Now, this week for me, I have Steph Curry for more than 29 points and Nikola Jokic for more than 10 rebounds, and then Caitlin Clark for more than 30 points and LeBron James for more than 7 assists. So download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. By the way, for all you people out there whose bracket have been busted already, Prize Picks is a great way to kind of just get in on the action without having to actually be good at anything. Because trust me, I'm terrible at it, so I know. But no, it's fun. So, anyways, is there another quarterback you want to talk about? Would you like to discuss? Would you like to discuss my guy from Tulane?
Michael Pratt. I have no Michael Pratt opinions.
What do you think?
I've watched him a little. He's like Bailey Zappi, but if Zappi could run, like a similar level of prospect. Yeah, I feel like Bailey Zappi at Western Kentucky, they just threw it a ton, and it's like I think he's a similar quarterback. He just threw it less, ran it a lot more.
Right. Yeah.
You could throw a pick at him. I haven't gone super deep into my Michael Pratt analysis, and it also included their game against USC last year, where USC has one of the most disgusting defenses I think I've ever set my eyes on. So I don't think I can take much away from that. Throw a pick at him if you want. I would rather use it on somebody else. Like you already have Bailey Zappi on the roster. If you're going to add another one, just keep Zappi and save your draft capital for something else.
I do agree with you. I mean, a guy like I'm more intrigued by a guy like Jordan Travis. Like I think that there's he's a late round flyer guy, but like there's things that he does that like normal quarterbacks you don't already have on the roster can't do. And so I don't know if he's ever actually going to be a good NFL quarterback, but like if you're betting on traits, I'd rather bet on a trait like that as opposed to a trait like Michael Pratt. So
I think it's also tough this year because a lot of the day 2, day 3 quarterbacks are super old guys,
right?
And like I don't know how much untapped potential there is with any of them. One of the names, like there's Austin Reed, who was Bailey Zappi's successor at Western Kentucky,
right.
And I think he came up from like a D2 school or something. And like he's kind of interesting if you're going to throw a pick at somebody, but I think if you're going to do a late round pick, I'd almost rather just wait for an undrafted free agent and bring in a camp body and see if it's anything. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between most of these guys.
Yeah,
and I don't think there's a lot of untapped potential on any of them. I think you use your first or your second on a quarterback, and after that, you're just going for other positions. Personally, that's my feeling.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right. Ooh, a good question here from John Neal. 6 wideouts currently on the roster: Juju, Hamler, DeMario, Keishawn
Not
Booty.
Hamler.
Oh,
Osborne.
KJ. Jesus Christ. Oh, boy. The draft talk really got me screwed up. KJ, he's like from years ago. KJ Osborne, Demario Douglas, Keishawn Booty, Tyquan Thornton, Kendrick Bourne. Do you really think they go into camp with 7? I think no, but I don't think, assuming they draft a quarterback, assuming they draft a wide receiver, I doubt Juju's here next year. And Keishawn Booty is certainly not locked to make the roster. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went into camp with 8 or 9 guys.
They usually do.
But 7 isn't, 7 aren't making the team. Juju maybe gets traded in camp or gets cut in camp. Keishawn Booty, probably not going to make the roster. TJ.
Trey
You're right, my boy Trey
Nixon.
Nixon. Trey Nixon's still out there. So that's,
He's gone. He's gone now.
He's
signed
not
elsewhere. But
no, didn't he sign a futures contract with him?
No, he didn't. He's one of the few that didn't. Yeah. I think the thing that's interesting is Rager. Well, Rager, I actually really like the Rager signing because I think he's decent as a backup, decent as like a 4th, 5th wide receiver type, and he's a kick returner now. He was good at that last year, and kick returns are back in. You're gonna have to do that again. So I think he'll be a valuable spot. Tyquan Thornton, he might not make the roster. Keishawn Booty, I'm still a little bit surprised he's on the roster at this point.
Right.
I don't expect him to make it. I think you'd need to see serious improvement, and he has the legal troubles. I would be willing to bet that you're going to have at least 1 or 2 receivers who aren't on the roster right now that end up making it out of camp. I think they probably draft at least 1 and sign at least 1 more still. Even if that 1 is a camp body, they're gonna put it this way. I think Osborne, Bourne, and Demario Douglas are the only 3 guys I'm confident are going to be breaking camp with this team.
Agreed.
And even then, Kendrick Bourne, I think, is ahead of schedule on his ACL. A guy like that is totally a candidate to start the season on the PUP list. If things go slower than people expect, that happens. So now I think you're going to. My personal philosophy on this would be to just draft 2 receivers. Throw 1 high pick, 1 medium to low pick at it, and hopefully both of those guys make the roster and turn into something for you.
Right. And don't worry about who's on your roster right now because your wide receiving core is not good. It's not good. So it doesn't matter what the numbers look like. Whether or not they do anything doesn't mean anything. It's irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference.
I would also say like Juju Smith-Schuster, I think he's going to end up being gone. They haven't cut him yet though because he's expensive to cut. You have to eat a lot of money on it.
Right.
If he's a guy who they find to be valuable as a teammate, supposedly he's a good locker room guy and he's dealt with injuries. If they think he might be healthier next year and he's definitely a good locker room guy and everything, I won't be shocked if they do bring him into camp and let him battle.
Yeah, why
and
not?
See how it goes. Or at least you bring him into, OTAs and your early offseason stuff in May and see how it looks then.
Yep.
And if this guy's not making it, you cut him then. You let him go catch on in camp with somebody else and see if he can make it there.
Or you theoretically trade him somewhere for a 7th round pick or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I don't even think that's going to end up happening. I think with the contract, I don't think anybody's going to take that money. I think you just got to eat it.
You're probably right. So, but it is a good question about the wide receivers. And there are more wide receivers on the team. You mentioned Jalen Reagor, and there are a few other guys that are just, random dudes. But
TJ Luther.
Yeah. So it's, there are guys that are there, but realistically, yeah. So, and again, that doesn't matter because, what's the worst thing that can happen? Oh my God, you end up with a ton of wide receivers that are really good. Well, that's a terrible problem to have. Who cares? You know what I mean? So I wouldn't worry about that at all. And just, you need explosive guys. They don't have a lot of those. They need way more of those. And so that's really what I'd care about right now.
And that's what, Tyquan's supposed to be, and he hasn't been. And it's year 3 for him. The 2nd round pick usually gets you 2 years on a roster, and that's up now. So this is, I think you've got 3 probably spots that are open to be fought for in camp. And at least 1 or 2 bodies, if not more, to be added to that
Yeah.
competition.
And Taekwon added some weight this summer. It looks like this offseason he's adding some weight, which is good.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to impact him at all on the field, but hey, good for him for putting the work in. And Burley's getting a shout out here because anytime you come up with a dad joke, you get a shout out. When they tell Keyshawn he's cut, that'll be a booty call. Love it. Good stuff right there.
Yeah. And Matt Manito says 2nd round pick. It's 2 years on a roster unless you are Duke Dawson.
That's a great point. Great point, Matt.
Duke Dawson is, I still think, the most underhated draft pick of the Bill Belichick era.
Yeah.
Like that was 2018, right? Or is it 2017?
I think that was. I think it was
2018. Yeah,
it was 18. 17 was the one they drafted like 3 guys.
Yeah, 2018 was a year where like they needed to come out with some offensive talent.
Yeah,
and Duke Dawson, who never plays a single snap for you at slot corner, like they missed on so many slot corner picks for so long.
Yeah, it was real bad.
They just kept using them at the position and then didn't use any of them on receivers.
Yep, and as Matt pointed out, he traded up for him too. Just an absolute abomination of a pick.
And it wasn't a reach or anything either, but it just, I think it was a reach a little bit, but not like anything crazy, not like Jordan Richards.
No, it's not. It's not like people were like, "What is Belichick doing? That's the worst. That's the worst pick ever." No one really said that. But it's tough when you look back at like. So what's interesting about it is that he was taken in the 50s. I think he was 50. What number was he? Hold on, 56, right? And so you start to look at the guys that went after him. DJ Shark went at 61, who like whatever, but Carlton Davis went at 63. Carlton Davis, by the way, was the pick that the Patriots traded up. Like, it's one of those things that like the Patriots were at 63, they moved up to 56 to draft Duke Dawson, and at 63, Tampa took Carlton Davis, who he's not an unbelievable player, but a hell of a lot better. You know what I mean?
Well, like DJ Chark, I'd rather have DJ Chark than N'Keal Harry.
Right,
100%. So
right.
that is tough
Fred
to
Warner.
look at
Fred Warner goes at 70. Like you just you go down the list and you're like, oh my god, dude! Like within the span, Michael Gallup goes 81. Like so within the span of like Orlando Brown goes at 83. Mark Andrews goes at 86. So like within the span of just one round, you're looking at it like, oh my god, there's so many guys that they missed out on. Would have been so much better, So it just it is what it is.
Also,
right?
When it's also 2015, you use a second on Jordan Richards, who's a slot defender there as a safety, and it doesn't work out. 2016, you use your first pick, a second on Cyrus Jones, a slot corner, doesn't work out. 2018, you use your 2nd round pick on Duke Dawson, a slot corner, it doesn't work out. And then 2019, you used it on Jawan Williams in the 2nd round. He's not a slot defender, but he is in your secondary, and that doesn't work out.
Yeah,
it really is astonishing that the secondary has been as good as it's been that entire time, with how often they have whiffed on the draft picks. Shout out to their undrafted free agent signings. Malcolm Butler and Jonathan Jones and J.C. Jackson in there, kind of saving the day for you.
Yeah, no, because
Miles Bryant.
It's been disastrous. I mean, really, really disastrous. And those picks set you back. You know what I mean? And someone said, Matt says Jordan Richards over Tyler Lockett was a disgrace, and it was and that's. You can look at so many other positions and you're like, man, like so many other spots that they could have hit on or drafted potentially impact players and, gone from there now. And I will push back on it. Like G over here is saying that he was hot garbage in the draft. I don't agree with that in total. I do think that Belichick had some really, really good drafts. I think he had a stretch. He had a stretch from, 2016, really 17, but maybe even 16 to about 2020-ish where he was bad. And that is why you have the dirt, why you have no talent on your roster right now, because those guys should be your veterans on your roster. And you didn't get anybody from that, from that group of guys. And so, but you're starting to see now these 2020 guys, Kyle Duggar, Mike Onwenu, Josh Uche, those guys are coming back. So he hit on a few of those guys, but that was 2020. Right. And so before that, for those few years, you missed on a bunch of guys. And even going back to 2015, they had a few picks in 2015 that did well. And they had a few picks in 2016 that did well. But like for the most part, it really wasn't great. And that's really where you are. So, and Matt pointed out too, like they cut Crayvon LeBlanc and Kenny Moore in consecutive years. And it was like,
And ended up with J.C.
man,
Jackson.
and so he kept J.C. Jackson, which is fine, but like those two guys, it's like they both had, and Crayvon LeBlanc was fine. He wasn't like a superstar or anything like that, but he's a good player. And Kenny Moore has been really good for Indy since the Patriots cut him. And so, those are things that's like they usually nailed those and they just didn't. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's not a UDFA, but you go back to 2012, they drafted Tavon Wilson pretty high, and like over time he turned out to be a decent player, but he was nothing. He never lived up to that draft pick. But then in the 7th round, you got Alfonso Dennard, who had a short tenure in New England, but he was decent when he was there. He was good, and then he fell off pretty quickly. But it's really funny how there was this habit of draft a DB in the 2nd round and sign an undrafted free agent, and the undrafted free agent is going to be better than the guy you picked in the 2nd.
Right.
And if any of those years you're taking offensive players instead, like you feel, but like that's the whole, like you can almost trace the failures in the draft back to trying to rebuild after the first dynasty, trying to rebuild the secondary and throwing so many draft picks at it and missing so often.
Yeah.
And
100%.
they eventually did rebuild the secondary, but they had to throw so many draft picks at it over such a large amount of time to do it that it just hurt you in other ways. And you also, lost the greatest quarterback and tight end of all time in that span, and that hurts.
That doesn't help. Yeah, that certainly doesn't help. And it's like 2021 draft is okay. Obviously Mac, but then you have Barmore in there. You have Ramondre in there, which are 2 good players. Ronnie Perkins that never did anything for you. Cam McGrone never played here. Josh Bledsoe, whatever.
He's still around. No, but like he'll compete for a 6th round pick. Yeah. He'll compete for a backup job this year. I think that's
which is fine, right? Which is fine. And then 2022 again, disaster of a draft, right? Now let's see how Cole Strange plays this year, but like still at 29, I don't love that pick. Tyquan Marcus. Don't love it.
Jones is still very much a question mark, I think.
Don't you dare.
As much as I love
Don't you dare.
Look,
don't do it.
Not as a returner. Nope. He's elite as a returner.
Will not accept it. Will not accept it. No, listen. You're not wrong. But Jack Jones, obviously good player, off the field just disastrous, and the rest of the draft is just hot garbage. Well, Sam Roberts maybe will compete a little bit.
Sam Roberts could slide in that Lawrence Guy role this year.
Yeah. And so we'll see what happens. You know what I mean?
And it's you go back to the 2021 draft. What I will defend here is that I still think Mac Jones was the right pick.
He was.
Because they needed a quarterback. He was the best on the board. And I don't think anybody was fooled about what the evaluation was. He just, didn't develop the way you thought he would. A lot of that's on the organization, and a lot of that is on Mac Jones himself, and that's life. I think if you go back then too, there's nobody in the next couple of picks that you're kicking yourself. Oh man, we could have gotten this guy. If they had taken Mac Jones when Micah Parsons was still on the board, you might be like, oh man, that's when we wish we had back. But there's nobody in the next couple of picks. There's a couple offensive linemen that went in the 20s that are all right, it would be nice if we had them. But
the best player taken in the 1st round probably was Christian Darrisaw and Jalen Phillips. Outside of 15.
Darrisaw is the guy you want, and that was a couple picks. That was 6 or 7 picks later, I think.
8 picks, 23.
8 picks later, So,
but how do you justify taking a left tackle there over a quarterback? You can't. You can't justify taking a left tackle over a quarterback, and that's
especially when you look at where they were at the time. You think Isaiah Wynn is a guy for you, and at left tackle, so you don't think that's a need. Then I still think that's the most underrated aspect of this whole thing. The offensive line largely got to where it got to because they thought they had a franchise left tackle, and he completely fell apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So again, always comes back to talent evaluation, right? Know what you have and do it right. And so that's so we'll see.
And accumulating just a number of draft picks, I think, can't be underrated either. Because even when you do it right, you're going to mess up. So 100%. If we can have, that's why you take 2 receivers, because you're probably going to miss on one of them. But the other, Pop and Kayshon Boutte looks like a miss, but Demario Douglas is a starting receiver in the NFL. So
correct. Yeah.
You feel good about it.
Yeah. And so the argument here, right, is that, Bill wanted to wait and take Davis Mills, which is fine. And I get that argument. But he wanted to take Christian Barmore at 15, who he got at 38. So it just, doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything. Right. And so that's, That's
Yeah.
that's the thing for me is that, you look at that and kind of go through it and say, look, we can argue about it all day about, whose pick it was and what should have happened and so on and so forth. But like, what difference does it make? And so that's the thing for me.
Yeah. I
But
also, yeah, I'll bring up another note here because I saw a mention in there about picking kickers. Um, I don't know if you saw this, but the top kicker in this year's draft is a kid out of, I believe it's Stanford,
yeah,
and he was supposed to go in like the 6th or 7th, and the Patriots were at his pro day today. Our
oh,
new special
baby.
teams coach was there. Apparently, I think Ben Peltzford, is that his name?
Let's go with that.
Yeah, had reported that earlier, which I think is I think that's interesting. Especially, like we haven't talked about kicker on here at all, but obviously Chad Ryland did not live up to expectations last year. We haven't heard a single whisper about them being interested in signing a veteran. Um,
Right.
and that I think is something we expected. And like, I think all the process was right on the Ryland pick. Falk was getting old; he couldn't even reach the end zone on kickoffs. You want to get younger. Ryland was the second best kicker in the entire draft prospect wise, and a guy they liked, the guy could kick in cold weather, and just got the yips.
Didn't
So
work. Yep.
I think ideally you bring Ryland into camp and have somebody else compete with him for the job. I'd like the person who competes with him to be a veteran who knows what's going on.
I can
But
certainly see that. Yeah.
like
But
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And that's the question, right? Is do you wait and take a guy in the 7th round? Do you pick up a guy as an undrafted free agent? Like how do you, where do you go from there? So we'll see. But you know, yeah, like you say, the yips is the perfect way to put it. He just can't do it. So
yeah.
um, but
Ben Belford Peltzman, that's the name of the reporter, and it was Tom Quinn. I don't know if they had the pro day yet, but he said is Tom Quinn is expected to be in attendance for Stanford's pro day. Kicker's name is
yeah, the
Joshua
assistant. Yeah.
Carty.
Okay. Oh
Like
yeah,
Tom
yeah,
Quinn's,
okay. Yep.
yeah, and Quinn's the old he's the old Giants guy.
He's the guy that's been
He's a
there
real
forever.
veteran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. So,
So
we'll
yeah,
see.
especially if they accumulate picks, I don't hate it. And from what I've heard, the league evaluations of this draft say that day 3 is not very good. Like rounds
Right.
5 and on are going to be really, really bad this year. If that's how the team views it and they don't think there's any good prospects there and they like a kicker, take the kicker and just see what happens.
Right. Right. And so we'll see. I mean, the jury's still out on what's going to happen, right? But I do think that, it wouldn't be the worst pick in the world to take a kicker. So especially with what the
It's
problems you
still,
had last year.
it is unfortunately still a need.
Yeah. So look, long story short, here's what we've come down to. If you believe now, listen, the chat is very split. Some people in the chat love Drake May. Some people in the chat do not like Drake May at all. Some people in the chat love Jaden Daniels. Some people don't like. This is the way it goes with pretty much everyone, right? But like the Patriots have to figure it out for themselves. If they believe Jaden Daniels and or Drake May is going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, you draft him. Period. Period. If you don't, you move the pick. That's what you have to do. And so, it comes down to what's your evaluation look like? And if your evaluation isn't that it, and we and we have that, then we go from there. James. James just said, I really hope someone tunes in right now to hear you say take a kicker. Well, the screen says what to do at pick 3. That's so good. So we'll see, and I just think that becomes that issue for the Patriots is like a quarterback who's going to be a top 10 guy in the NFL, or you move out and get a massive package. And if you don't love those quarterbacks, and you feel like left tackle is your best shot, do you take Joe Alt? I think they probably take Marvin Harrison Jr. if they're not going to,
Yeah.
if they're not going to take a quarterback. But
Because
we'll see what happens.
if Marvin Harrison Jr. is what you think he can be, like right away, then this receiving core goes from bottom 10 in the league to top 15 potentially, because the other
Right.
pieces would also complement him really well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and that's, obviously you got to build up the line, but I'll mention this because I know we talked a lot about the line.
Mhm.
I think the line is in better shape right now than it was at this point last year. Because, Calvin Anderson is the same. Connor McDermott is the same. you have one tackle spot shored up and the other one isn't. And I like the competition there better because you got Okorafor, who I think is better than anybody they had in camp. He's much better than Riley Reef.
Yep.
And you still have the other two veterans. And you have, Valerian Lowe and Tyrone Wheatley, that are hanging around the back end of the roster and are big old question marks that probably aren't anything, but maybe turn into something. So, I think you need to upgrade the tackle spot. But you could go play an NFL game with the offensive linemen you have right now when they're healthy. And they also upgraded their interior depth. They signed the lineman whose name is escaping me here, Nick Leverett in Tampa.
Yes.
Really,
Yep, from
really
Tampa.
solid interior backup.
Yep.
So I think they're much better built to sustain injuries now than they were last year.
They've improved their depth significantly, and which is good. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna be great or anything like that. But I like that idea. And so we'll see. I don't know what's gonna happen. But I do feel a little bit more comfortable with their offensive line than I did last year. And I think that they're in a position to kind of do whatever they need to do. They're not going to win this year pretty much no matter what. So you want to get the best player possible.
Building a new foundation. That's what we're
100%.
doing right now.
Yep, 100%. So, all right, let's get into our final segments. We okay with that?
Yeah, I'm down. We're going to do trivia first?
Yeah, let's do the trivia first. Because we're not going you're going to ask a trivia question, or are you just going to spin the wheel?
Both. I got both.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Want to do the wheel first? Let's do the wheel first.
Yeah, and I'll explain this for anybody that's new in here, since we got a bunch of viewers. At the end of every midweek episode that we do, we ask a trivia question. And the first person who answers it correctly in the chat gets entered at the end of a period of time into a drawing to win a gift from us. I believe the last one was a hat from the Pro Shop. Is that what it was, Pat?
The last one was a hat from the Pro Shop, yep.
Yes, so some kind of Patriots related gear. We'll hash out the details with you with whoever ends up winning.
Yep.
So we have collected trivia winners since the end of the regular season or the bye week or something like that.
I think it was around the bye week, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it's been a while.
So we're going to spin with all the winners there. And then after that, we are going to be starting our next group of trivia questions here. So if you'd like to be entered into this, stay tuned for that trivia question and jump on it, throw an answer in the chat, and try to be the first one to get it correct. Let me set this up. Yeah, give me 1 sec so we can spin this wheel.
Do it. Oh, here we go.
And there's a lot of repeated names on here. Thad Skywalker and Matt Manito have been dominating this, and somebody needs to get in here to beat them. But here's our wheel spin for this amount of time since the bye week.
Here we go. Get a little drum roll. No, we don't need a drum roll. But let's say
your dad won.
Oh, get out of here! He can buy his own damn gift.
Do we want to do another one?
No, we can't do another one. He won. Okay. What are we gonna do?
Okay. Well, I promise you guys, it isn't rigged.
Jesus. All right. I'll post the picture on Twitter. Everyone can see what I bought him. But he probably listen. I'm gonna be using his discount to buy it. So. Oh goodness, dude.
Matt, you're also lime green elevator.
Jesus Christ, ridiculous.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah, we need you guys to be in it, to be on it for these questions. Maybe can we find a way to make sure Thad and Matt are on a stream delay here so they get the question
get
10
seconds
get
on a 10 second. Get them on the 10-second FCC delay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, all right. Tonight's question. It's the offseason, so I went with a little theme here. Since today is March 21st, we're using that theme for a jersey number here.
Okay, I like that.
Which Patriot wearing number 21 caught Brady's first 3 completions to start his game-winning drive in Super Bowl 36? Looking for a New England offensive player wearing 21 in Super Bowl 36. Throw those answers in the chat. Yeah, you'll get. We'll announce who won this week and to the answer on next week's episode. So
Yes.
make sure you come back for that.
Yep.
We won't tell you if there's a correct answer in the chat tonight. So you'll have to come back to find out.
That's correct. That is
Yeah.
correct. So, all right.
do we-
Would you like to? You want to get to? Here we go. Hold on. It's my favorite segment. We haven't run the segment in a bit here because I honestly forgot with Keegan midweek last week. So I had one all set up and I forgot. So here we go.
And now for something we think you'll really like. This week in sports history.
All right. So I actually have two.
Okay.
So I'll go first with my first and then we can go from there. So I don't know. This is unconfirmed, but it would be completely insane if it's actually true. In 1953, on this day in 1953, March 21st, 1953, there was an NBA record. Boston played Syracuse in the NBA, and there were 106 fouls and 12 players fouled out.
I almost used that as my fact of the day.
Did you? That's so insane. 100 and like what the hell, dude?
I hope there's footage of that game somewhere. I want to say.
I mean, my goodness, dude. Syracuse Nationals was the team, and I believe that they eventually moved. I think they moved to did they become Philly? I think they became the Philadelphia 76ers. But either way, they were the Syracuse Nationals, and they 106 fouls and 12 players fouled out. What an incredible game! What an incredible game!
That's incredible. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yep.
Mine is on this day, March 21st, 1994. Wayne Gretzky tied Gordie Howe's NHL record of 801 goals.
Oh, that's a good one. Listen, let me tell you something about Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky, we talk about GOATs on here, right? Obviously, Brady's the GOAT in football, we believe at least.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Gretzky is the undeniable GOAT. Like, he's the one, that's the one league where I'm like, there is no argument. There's no argument. The argument doesn't exist in the NHL.
They retired his number everywhere.
Yes, but it's not just that. It's the fact that my favorite stat, maybe in all of sports, is the fact that if you took away all of Wayne Gretzky's goals, every single one of the goals he ever scored, ever, he would still lead the NHL in career points. He has more assists than the rest of the NHL history has assists plus goals. It's insane. It's completely insane. And so that's the one for me where I'm like, okay, that's it. Like, he's the best. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's good.
So anyways, that's a good one. That's a good one. And my second one is from 1958. It is March Madness related. The 20th NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. Kentucky beat Seattle 84-72. And in the losing effort, Seattle's future Hall of Fame small forward Elgin Baylor is named the tournament's most outstanding player.
There we go.
There you go. There you go. It's a little one for you.
I love it. Matt Manito in the chat also says, please more uniform number questions. We didn't talk about in here. We got some new uniform numbers. Jalen Rager switching to number 1. DeMario Douglas switching to number 3. And KJ Osborne in 2. So 1, 2, 3, and 84 are your top receivers.
I like it. It's a little wild, but I do like it. I like the idea of Pop being at 3. I think it makes a lot of sense.
It works for him. I still wish he was 83. I want him to be the new Deion Branch, but I'll take it.
He kind of was the new Deion Branch, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But okay, that's what we got. So, here we go.
Good.
James
Kirkham.
1984, the owners of the NFL outlawed any prolonged, excessive, premeditated celebration by individual players or groups of players. That was just an absolute, just such an infamous rule. And he's right. They sought to break, 1965, when Homer Jones spiked the football for the first time. So yeah. So there you go.
Dumb. I'm glad that we have celebrations again. That's part of the fun.
Remember, they got rid of it. They got rid of the team celebration too. After, it's just just let them have fun, for Christ's sake. What are we doing?
Well, and also this is entertainment, and people doing controversial things on the field is fun. Like that's
Correct.
giving you something dumb to get angry about is like
Right.
half the enjoyment of watching sports.
Why do you care? Why do you care? You shouldn't care. Why do you care? Oh, we got a Matt St. Jean's the GOAT.
That's my old college friend there. Shout out Dan.
I love it. I love it. So, all right. Well, that's what we got. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you all for being here. Enjoy. There are 0 good games going on right now. Although Texas Tech, NC State looks like a pretty good game.
NC State winning that one.
St. Peter's getting blown out by Tennessee.
Washington State Drake is interesting too.
Oh,
Both of those about to
Drake.
hit half. So I think I'll put those. You know what I did? I don't have YouTube TV, but I pulled a pro move today and I signed up for the free trial of YouTube TV.
Oh, it's smart.
For 5 days for the weekend, and I get the multi-view.
That's I thought Samford. I'm disappointed in this game because I thought Samford was like gonna run it up and down the court nonstop, and they just haven't done that at all.
McNeese State and Samford were way too trendy as upset picks, and I stayed away from them. I wasn't having it.
Yeah, I'm a sucker, and so I picked both those guys to win. But you know it is what it is, so it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah. Yep.
So
yeah. All right. Is that it for tonight's episode?
That is it. So thanks everyone for coming through. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back on Monday night with another mock draft. This time we'll be breaking down my mock draft 3.0.
3.0 for you. I'm curious where you go
mock
with this
draft 3.0. I'm excited.
And make sure for anybody that's listening in, if you want your mock featured on Monday for us to look at it, send it in to us.
Yes.
And we're not going to no promises we get to every one, but we're going to try to get it to as many as we can.
Yep. So DM me or Matt on Twitter, or you can send us an email. It's patsnationnetwork@gmail.com. It's all one word, patsnationnetwork@gmail.com. Send them in to me, or send them in to us, and then we will get to as many as we possibly can on Monday night's show. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you on Monday night. Enjoy the weekend with all of the ridiculous amount of games this weekend.
Good luck with your brackets.
Yeah, mine's already busted, I'm sure, but that's the way it goes, So, all right, guys. See ya.